everyone. Welcome to Agroye's very first webinar training. I'm Elizabeth, and today I will be your moderator. Would like to meet you, so please kindly drop a message in the message section telling us your name and where you are from. Our topic today is 7 agribusinesses to start in 2024, and we'll be hearing from Agroye's founder, Timothy Sholadoye. Before we get started, I want to take a few minutes to introduce Agroye. Agroye is an agricultural media agency with the main aim of simplifying agriculture. At Agroye, we understand that many people want to try farming, but agriculture can be quite complicated. Our mission is to simplify things by offering clear, helpful information. We want to empower individuals with the knowledge needed to delve into agriculture. If you visit our website, agroye.com, you'll find helpful articles on agribusiness, food, health, news, agri-tech, and also agro-hero stories, which are real-life tales of unknown farmers silently bringing food to our tables. Agroye is also a We Make Change startup, a community of the world's top impact startups. Our speaker today is a software engineer with a strong background in agriculture, which, if you ask me, is an interesting combination. And today he'll be sharing insights on palm oil supply, sales of garri, rice processing, grain supply, sales of seedlings, quail farming, and cassava flour processing. The chat window is active, please. Check in for some information as the training goes in. I'll monitor messages during the call for complaints, and we'll also be taking messages, but would leave question and answer session until after the training session. I implore you to please mute your microphones, follow closely, get your writing materials, and take notes so you don't miss a thing. So if we're ready, Mr. Timothy, you can go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Agroye first webinar. I'm glad to have you here. We still have people joining. Wait for them. So we'll proceed and they will join us later. Please, I'd want us to note that this session is being recorded and the recording will be available to us all after the session. And also for privacy purpose, just know that you're being recorded. Thank you. It's one of the very important etiquettes of meeting to let the people know when they are being recorded. Okay, so I proceed. 7 agribusinesses to start in 2024. I know on this call, we have a lot of people registered and a lot more would be joining from different states in Nigeria. We have people from the north, from Lagos, we have people from the south and the east. That's why we requested you drop your location on the group, so on the chat, so we know where you're from. And this training is not only tailored for people in Lagos, Abuja, permit me to call them the big markets. Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt is not just tailored for these markets. You can do agribusiness from anywhere. Okay, what we are or who we are. As Elizabeth has said, Agro is a media agency, an agri media agency. A lot of people want to do agriculture, and something we've noticed is over the years there've been a lot of scam and misinformation about agriculture. We are here to correct that. So we provide insightful ideas, contents, recipes on our website and all our social media platforms, on Instagram, TikTok, where we have one of our largest audience, where people can see quality information about agriculture. That's what we are. We have an aim to increase the number of farmers in Africa, and we are taking it a step at a time with the 7 businesses you can start in this. We have quite a number of them listed here, from cassava flour processing to palm oil, rice processing, grain supply, garri sales, quails, and seedlings. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about at least 1 or 2 of these. Most likely palm oil and grains, because we consume grains, and rice processing. We'll look at how you can also be a part of it and launch your own business. I'll start with the palm oil. Please, something to note is that you can drop your questions, you can note down your questions, and after the session, we'll have a question and answer session where we'll answer any questions you have about um, the presentation. Good to go. Give me a moment, please. Okay, thank you. All right, we start with palm oil. The palm oil supply business is simply the buying and selling of palm oil. Palm oil usually comes in 20-liter gallon from suppliers. Please, you may please mute if you're not speaking. Palm oil mostly is sold in 20 liters from suppliers. And the best of oil in Nigeria is said to be from the east. Meanwhile, you can source your palm oil from Imo State and some other states in the east from Ekiti. They call it Yoruba oil. But interestingly, people do not like the Yoruba oil. They said there's a 5% chance of it being quality. I don't know why. But Calabar oil is also very good. When you contact a major supplier, that's where you get the best deals. They don't sell in small quantity. So you may not just go to a supplier and ask for just maybe 5 liters of oil. They don't do such. These people harvest the palm and they harvest the palm and process it. So they always want huge purchase. Now, Ghana has another type of oil, apart from these ones we said in Nigeria. It's called the flavored palm oil. They call it Zomi. It's very good, to be honest, and it's different from how ours look like. The Zomi oil is only the top. If you can see, I don't know if you can see where my arrow is. This particular palm oil here, the third in this picture, there is uh, a top part of it. So the thicker part is down, then the lighter part is up. The Zomi oil is only the lighter part, and that's how they sell it, without the heavy part we usually have in our palm oil for the lower part. Um, if you want to supply after sourcing your palm oil, you you can sell to local people. Of course, we are talking about businesses you can start. So you mustn't go rent a shop in the market. You mustn't go get a stall in a huge market before you start selling your palm oil. You can sell to your local people. Start with your environment. Get online. Get WhatsApp. Get on WhatsApp, and then voice of mouth. There's something our resource person for palm oil said. She said, if you have good palm oil, it will sell itself. Now, challenges to the palm oil business. Apologies, you have to mute that person. Okay, challenges to the palm oil business. It's very important to have a very good supplier. That's the number one challenge. If your supplier is bad, or is corny or is shady, he would not give you good product. Another challenge is bad palm oil and bad taste. Imagine you bring 120 gallons of palm oil and they all have bad taste. You can't consume your 20 gallons alone. So it's very important to have a good supplier that would give you good products. No matter which location you are in, either you are in Lagos or Abuja or Port Harcourt or any other place, and you are sourcing for this product, you may not be chanced to visit Imo or go to Calabar to buy your oil. That's why you need a good person in that location. Now, the storage challenge. Palm oil cannot be placed on the ground. We mentioned it's placed in a 20-liter gallons, but you cannot just place it on the ground. It can damage the oil. So you need to find a base for you to put your palm oil on. Another challenge is if the palm oil was hot when it was poured into the gallon, it will have issues. It will affect the taste and you would not be able to sell that. Okay, now advice. Since we are giving tips on starting businesses, there are some tips we have for palm oil supply. Number one is in storage. If you want to make a lot of money from palm oil sale, you need to buy when it's cheaper. It's cheaper in the early part of the year. That's when they harvest the palm kernel from the tree and process it. So it's better you buy at that point and then you store. Say I'm currently in Abuja and I want to do this business. I will ensure I tell my contact person to send me these goods when it is in season and I store. But doesn't mean you can't make profit if you don't store. Turnover is also good. You can buy, maybe you have a contact that sells at 15,000 and you sell at 17,000. It's fine. At least you make 2,000 naira per jerrycan or per gallon. But if you want to make better margin, you need to keep for a period of time. And when you want to keep for a period of time, you need to store in a metallic drum. And one of those big drums can take 11 20-liter gallons. So that's the start, I think. You can start with 11. Now, for logistics, depending on the location, mostly from the east to Lagos costs about 1,000 naira per 20 liters. And it can take up to 5 days before they deliver. Now it's left to you to say, I want to use a better logistic company so it will arrive faster. But since if you want to keep, you are not necessarily in a hurry, the 5 days wouldn't be an issue. For packaging, some people prefer to sell their oil in 75 cl. That's the image we had at initial stage. You can sell your oil in 75 cl. You can get 34 or 35 from that 20 liters pieces of the 75 cl. Or some people prefer to sell in 5-liter container. As I said, it's depending on your market. Some people may prefer to sell in bulk, and some may prefer to just sell units. If you're in a student area, definitely the 75 cl will sell better. But if you're in a family environment, you can go with the 5 liters or 4 liters. Now, for the pricing, it's a lucrative business to do. Around 2022 January, 20 liters was sold for about 12,000 naira in the East. So imagine you use 12,000 to bring and to purchase, use 1,000 naira for transport. Around August, September, it was sold between 20 and 25,000. Of course, price has gone up in Nigeria because of the exchange rate and the cost of logistics, because of fuel price. So the pricing will be different, but definitely you have a good margin on your palm oil supply business. Please take note of your question and you can ask them after the session. I know some people's hands are raised, but let's just please hold on for a while and we'll ask the questions at the end of the session. That'll be all on palm oil supply. Let's move to the next one, Gary sales. Gary sales. I like Gary sales business because it's a staple in Nigeria. It's produced from fresh cassava. Interestingly, there are a few millions of tons of Gary. Now, a ton is 1,000 kilograms. So I'm sure we'll talk about this more also when we're talking about grains. Now, if you're not familiar with a ton is 1,000 kilograms. And a regular size truck can take 30 tons. That's 30,000 kilograms. Now, in Nigeria, we produce millions of tons of Gary yearly. And of course, if we are producing it, it means we are consuming it either locally or internationally, because there are Nigerians outside the country who also source for Gary from Nigeria. One Gary that sells much outside the country is the yellow Gary, for whatever reason. Maybe they use it for EBA. I don't know. But there's always a demand for Gary in Nigeria. Most states in Nigeria have their type of Gary. Of course, that's in sourcing. If you want to source for your Gary, you look for where you have a supplier, as I said earlier. So if you are in somewhere like Abuja, it's good you get a supplier in whatever location, but it's trustworthy and he produces good Gary. We have the Jebu Gary, we have the white Gary. In the north, they have different names they call Gary also. There are some that are coarse, there are some that are crunchy, there are some that are very soft, depending on your preference. The yellow one is also used for EBA, mostly. Now, Togo and Ghana have their own quality Gary. There's a particular guy we purchase Gary from. He sells Togo Gary. And the Togo Gary is toneless, and it's crunchy, and it's very white. Very interesting. Ghana Gary is also very good. It's also crunchy, really crunchy, and white, and stoneless. Now, when you want to supply your Gary, how do you go about it? The first option is you supply to your local market. Supplying to local market is if you try to reach someone who already sells Gary, he definitely has a supplier. Well, definitely, he has a supplier, and his supplier may even be someone who produces in bulk. So you may not be able to reach out to him. For such a scenario, you can get a store. But take note, in places like Lagos and some big cities, you cannot just go to a market and decide to start selling Gary. You need to be a part of the association. They have a Gary association. That's why you wonder, why is it that when Gary price increases across board, everybody increase their price? How do you hear about it? It's because they have a union. So if you want to sell Gary in the local market, you need to join that union. Not only Gary, any other product, even palm oil. That's I'm speaking for the Lagos markets mostly, but other markets I'm not sure they are very serious with that union. But in the East, I've heard they take that also very serious. Now you can package for supermarkets because I don't want to go open and join a union that will tell me how much I should sell my gari. I can decide to go package and sell in supermarket, and that's what is trendy lately. You can sell your gari for double the price of the local markets when you have it packaged. And you can also package your gari for export. Gari business is simple. It does not require any processing from your end. All you need to do is just source for the gari, package it, and sell. Okay, now the advice for starting. Number one is storage. You need to store your gari well. And that's a very important point. Storing your gari cannot be overemphasized. Do not put it on the ground. Ensure it is tight and it is in a dry location. Now for logistics, when you are moving your gari from a location, say you are moving Ijebu gari now, you need to ensure it's not packaged with any other food stuff like fish. Fish should definitely give a taste to your gari. I'm sure we've purchased gari in the market and it smells something. I've smelled chemicals on gari and any other thing. So ensure that you move your gari well. And to avoid losing some products in transit, package them properly. I've seen some trucks where gari is leaking on the road. That's someone's loss. Even if some people are packing it as it's moving, but it's someone's loss. And as business owners, we don't want that. Now, for the packaged gari, there's a particular gari we buy now from supermarkets. It's sold at 3,500 naira for a kilogram. Meanwhile, a measure of gari that is over a kilogram in the market is sold for 1,000 to 1,005. But because this is packaged, is clean, is stoneless, and is very white. It's actually filtered also. It's sieved. They sell it at a higher price. So you can do that. But the challenge with that is you need to get your NAFDAC and every other food licensing to give you the approval. It may be lengthy, but it's worth it. It's worth the profit. The profit margin is higher, even though you may not make so much sales, but it's higher than selling in the local market. Now for exports, you can register with NAFDAC, you can register with the Export Promotion Council, and you get the requirements for you then get the requirements for exports. We'll have a deep dive into food exports in a future session, because we have resource persons in food exports specifically. So we're going to have a session with them, with Agroye, and we would ensure we learn one thing or the other. One of the people we know usually exports pap to UK and Canada. So it's worth doing. And of course, you get foreign inflow. There's nothing better than that in business. That's all for gari sales. We move on quickly now to rice processing. There's an error. There's a typo in that. So apologies. Rice processing. Now, demand for local rice is on the rise. Of course, we know what's going on with foreign rice. With the amount of, with how high it is to source for foreign exchange, it's really difficult to import rice. It's possible, but it will be really expensive. So Nigerians now process our own locally made rice. And to be honest, some rice factories in Nigeria have so high technical know-how that they produce really quality rice, that if you are not told that this is a local rice, not foreign, you wouldn't know. There are lots of states that farm rice in Nigeria, so many states actually. And because of the increase in the demand, farmers are going into this. Yola and Kano have really good rice. People pride in Yola and Kano rice. Another is a village in the east called Ohafia. I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly. They produce rice very well. So they may not be farming it so much, but they process their rice very well. In fact, their processed rice is at par with foreign rice. Maybe you can read up on them one of these days. Now, for where should you site your rice processing plant? Depending on your capacity, if you want to set it up in a place close to the farm, you can be sourcing for the rice that the husk has not been removed. Rice come in husk or hull, where you need to remove first before you process. But if your processing plant is a little bit far from the farm, you should get only the rice that the husk have been removed, because the husk is a little bit more weight. So you don't want to be carrying weight around. It would increase your cost of logistics. Now, the challenges with rice processing business. Challenges with rice processing business. Number one is in rice selection. That's why we say need good technical know-how. The dryness of the rice at purchase is very important. And the next challenge is, if your machine isn't good and you process the rice, it can get broken. When your rice gets broken during processing, the value will drop. Everyone knows that the rice is long grain. Everyone buys long grain rice. But if your rice that you're supplying to the market is broken, the value will drop. People would not buy it at the normal price. Now, for rice processing, what's the advice for starting? Number one, you should understudy a functional factory. Understudy a functional factory. There's a story told by our resource person for rice processing. A man ordered for 30 tons. You know, I mentioned the ton is 1,000 kilograms. He ordered for 30 tons of rice, and his resource person, or his contact person, went to the farm and purchased this rice. Interestingly, he did not take into cognizance the moisture content of the rice. And when they were shipping, that's another thing in logistics. When they were taking the rice in the truck to his warehouse, it started to rain. They didn't have anything to cover the rice. The rice got soaked, and when they delivered in the warehouse, he locked it up for a while, and the next time he checked, the rice had become black. There's no amount of processing you would do to make that rice white, and he lost 30 tons of rice. And that's a very big loss. And I say again, we're not in the business of making loss as entrepreneurs, so we need to be careful with that. Now, for the machines, the rice processing is a little bit on the high side to start. There are processes. The first is the rice huller or rice husker. That's what removes the back of the rice. Then we have the destoner, the polisher. There are some machines that serve as a husker and also a polisher, but they come at a higher price. We should know that in Nigeria, a lot of rice being made is the husk is removed manually, not with hand. That's why I mentioned earlier that you can, if your processing plant is far from the farm, you can ask them to manually remove the husk before you ship. Now, but there are industrial machines. Industrial machines don't damage rice, no matter the type of rice, either low moisture content or very dry rice. The industrial machines will not damage the rice, and they will come out as long grain, but they come at a very, very high price. That's what a lot of rice processing factories in Nigeria use. They use the good machines such that it doesn't matter if the rice is really good at purchase or not, their machine will be able to process it. Now, how do you make money from the rice processing plant? You can start your own rice brand. And there are lots of resource people we have that are in the business of starting, making you have your own rice brand. What they do is they attach you to rice farms or rice processing plants. There are so many rice processing plants in Nigeria today. So if you want to start this business, you may not even need to buy the machines. You go to a rice processing plant and you tell them you want them to produce for you. You can go buy your rice and you give to them. You source for your quality rice, you give to the farm, to the processing factories, and they process your rice for you and bag it in your name. Please, let's take note of that. You don't own the machines, you don't own the factories. You just buy your rice, you take it to the plants, they process the rice for you, and you bag it in your own brand. Now, how do you get your NAFDAC number for such a business? You partner with these factories, because these factories, all they do is just processing. You partner with them, and NAFDAC will come inspect their facility on your behalf. So their facility would serve as the inspection location for NAFDAC. Everything for nutritionists and the farm managers will be provided by the rice factories, and you get your NAFDAC number in your name. I think it's a good way to start before you eventually buy your machines and set up your own factory. Now, if you have your own machines, you can also do the same thing that others are doing for customers. You can process for others at a charge, right? So these are two ways. You can ask your questions later on. And I just want us to note here that this session is just to give us idea of these businesses And for in the next 2 weeks or 1 month, we'll have resource persons who are dedicated in these businesses to give us an in-depth knowledge on how we can start immediately. Now, for pricing, if you want to get your own machines, so 2 years ago, a friend got a destoner and a polisher. His own is just polisher. It required manual husking or husking done somewhere else, and he got it for 3 million naira. Of course, we know what's going on now. You may most likely would not get one for 3 million naira today. The destoner, his destoner that he got for that amount can do 1,500 kilogram an hour, and the polisher can do 800 kilogram an hour at maximum capacity. I think this is good. Okay, that'll be all for rice processing. You can take note of your questions or write down your questions, and we'll take them after the session. We'll move on to grain sales and supply. Grain sales and supply. Now, there are so many grains in Nigeria. So many. There are some we've never heard about. Acha, for instance, if not for people who are in the north, you wouldn't know what acha is. We have sesame seed. Of course, we know sesame seed as what's on our burger, but sesame seed is used for other things. We have sesame oil and so many things. Now, okay. For your sesame seed or for whatsoever grain you want to do, is all dependent on your location. Where do you want to supply? Where do you want to source from? Is what determines what grain you should do. For instance, in the east and in maybe Kogi State, they use soya beans a lot for okpa. In the north, some people use soya beans for soya like food, like cheese. In some factories, they use the soya beans now for soya milk and maize. Of course, you know a lot of factories use maize for either semovita or semolina or animal feed and so many things like that. For rice, we mentioned Yola and Kano is a good place to source for good rice. For maize, Mangu is in Plateau State. I'm not sure we're familiar with that location, but there is herdsmen killing going on in that area of recent, and because of that, people are not able to source for maize in that location anymore. Now people go to Saminaka and Kaduna and other places to source for good maize. Soya beans, Gombe is a home of beans. If you want any type of beans, either the edible beans or soya beans, you can get in Gombe. Acha, you can get in Jos and some other locations. Bauchi also, you can get that. Beni seed and egusi. Egusi is so expensive right now. And because of the insecurity going on in some villages in Nasarawa State, it's not easy to get them out. So that's one of the things that affects cost of food and grains in Nigeria: insecurity and cost of transport. But as of for a few years now, it has been insecurity taking the lead in that regard. Now, when you source for your grains, where do you supply? The first is you supply for home consumption. Everyone eats beans. Okay, maybe not everyone, but in every state in Nigeria, beans is being consumed. And there are different types of beans: iron beans, red beans, honey beans, and whatsoever. So you need to know what is in demand in your location. In Lagos, for instance, people like the brown beans or the honey beans a lot. Maybe in Jos, I think they use the white beans, or in Nasarawa. So you need to know what you want to supply or where you want to supply before you go into a grain. Now, for FMCG supply, this is an interesting one. It's an FMCG that's okay, fast moving consumer goods, people that make food and feed, like Honeywell, flour mills, UAC, Dangote. So many of these people that produce food, they are in high need of grains, different types of grains. So you can actually walk into any of these FMCGs and ask them to give you a local purchase order. They'll give you registration and you do that and you can supply them. But the challenge with supplying FMCGs is their price, their terms of payment. A number of them will tell you you bring your goods, but you don't get paid until after 60 days. Some will tell you you get paid after 30 days. Some tell you you cannot bring less than 30 tons. And imagine you bringing 30 tons of maize, for instance, and you don't get paid until after 2 months. You are tying down your capital. And a lot of times their price is low. because they go into the market, find out the best market price, and they just put a small margin for logistics on it. It's a little bit, you need volume to make good money from supplying it. Okay, challenges. Of course, I've mentioned FMCG pricing, their terms and delayed in payments, and then storage. Storage is very important in grains. Say you buy grain with high moisture content, and you keep it somewhere, and it dries up. You lose weight, you lose quantity, such that when you are selling, you don't sell as many maybe measure as what you bought. So moisture content is very important. For grains that you don't want them to lose their moisture content, there are some bags, some plastic bags they sell. You can put it in there, moisture won't come out and won't go in, and you can keep it for a long period. But for grains that you are already dried, like beans, and you only need to just store, you don't care about it losing moisture content, you just put it in jerry cans or gallons and you tighten it. But if you are keeping for a long period, I think I mentioned that here in storage, as if you want to start grain supply. If you are putting it in for a long period, you can use drums, seal the drums, and put dry pepper on top of it to keep insects away. Of course, we know what happens to beans when insects get in. But for soya bean shell is really hard, so it's not so prone to weevils and any other insect affecting it. But the normal beans we consume is prone to that. Very important when you are doing grain business, do not use chemicals. There are some chemicals they use to preserve beans to keep away weevils, that when you eat the beans, you taste the chemicals. They use there's this chemical that has been banned, sniper. Some people use sniper on beans, and imagine how harmful that is when we consume it. So do not use chemicals when you're keeping your grains. Very important. Okay, so my advice for on grain business is to find the grain in your environment. Now, because of this training, you definitely meet people. Eventually, when we have our connects, you meet people in the north where they grow some grains. You meet people in the south where they are in need of this. And when we connect you, you'll be able to say, okay, I need penny seed or I need soya beans, and they'll be able to supply you. Okay, as we say, also decide where you want to sell to, either for home consumption or for FMCG supply. Thank you. That'll be it on grain supply and sale. We move on to seedlings. Now, when we mention seedlings, well, first thing that will come to someone's mind will be seed. Maybe a seed, a mustard seed, for instance. But when you talk about seedlings here, we're talking about small plants that you can keep and they produce your fruits, right? It's just at a young age, having a nursery, and you sell these small seedlings to people that want to buy. They don't need to go look for the apple seed or look for whatsoever seed. They just buy the little nursery stock, and they keep it, and it produces the fruit for them. And there are different types of seedlings. I'm sure some of us only know apple. We don't know where apple come from. So that's one of our jokes in Agroye, that take your children to the farm so they don't think apples come from the ground or whatsoever way. So there are different types of seedlings here, and these are the market price for it in the north. For the seedling business, we advise when you want to start, you start as a middleman. You'll be surprised that there is a demand for mulberry, and I know a lot of us don't know what mulberry is, or passion fruits, or grapevine. We don't know what they are. So if you want to go into this business, just learn one or two of these. I know the most popular one is the apple and the English pear. Just know about it, create a brand around it, advertise, get customers before you start keeping your nursery. It's very important. So you can familiarize yourself with these seeds. Now, when you know these a lot, I heard a story recently of someone who is selling seedlings, and he sold, as you can see, a budded apple is 12,000 naira in the north. Someone sold grass, normal grass that looks good, to someone as apple. Maybe the person doesn't even know. Maybe he's also a middleman that sourced from someone. but he doesn't know that it was grass that was given. He could not identify the plants. When you get familiar with this business, you'll be able to identify how each and every one of these look like. As I said earlier, start as a middleman. Very important is after sales support. A lot of people that will buy your seedlings are people that are enthusiasts. They just want to buy an apple and put it in their house to see how it grows, to see if it will produce many fruits. So they are not so experienced in keeping this, right? So what you need to do is to follow up with your customers. After they've bought it, tell them, okay, how is it doing? Are you watering it? Don't water it too many times, water in the evening, and so many things like that. After sales support is very important because they would come back for more. Now, plants can experience shock during travel. Of course, maybe you're taking it from Kaduna or from Gombe and you're sending it to Port Harcourt. When it arrives in Port Harcourt, the leaves may have dried up and it's just left with the stem. Your customer may think you've scammed him and tell you gave him a dead plant, but you need to let him know that no, nurture it for a while, it will sprout again, right? So that's one important thing when you're doing the seedling business. If not, people will think you are supplying them fake products. Okay, that'll be it for seedlings. I'm sure if you have questions, we can take them also later. We move on to quails. I know a lot of people, when we hear quails, the only time we've heard it is about when the Israelites got quails and ate, right? There's a demand for quails in Nigeria, but it's mostly for health purpose, for diabetics patients. They say it has other benefits, but what my experience is that it's diabetes patients that get the quails and the eggs a lot. Now, in Jos has a lot of quail farmers, but due to the cost of feed, there's been a drop in demand. Of course, we know what's going on with the poultry business lately. So many issues with feed, cost of, and so many other things. Anyways, so farmers are not keeping poultry as much as they used to before, except those who are in it for the long run. Now, for supply, there's a large demand in Lagos, Delta, Port Harcourt. For whatever reason, maybe they know about the information about how good it is with diabetics patients. Challenges with quails. Rats eat quails at small stage. I have a personal experience of this. While keeping quails, I lost about 30 or 40% to rats. So they come in, eat the quails, and you only see the feathers of the quails. Quails are really tiny birds. They are maybe 1/5 or 1/6 of a regular bird, a regular chicken. They're really tiny. And when they are really small, you won't believe they'll be able to grow. So rats come, you pick them up, and that's it. And it's a loss to you. Another challenge with quails is stampede. You know stampede is in animal rearing, all of them gathering together in one place. The reason here is quails like heat. They want everywhere to be warm. If the place is not warm, they come together to keep themselves warm. And when they do that, they step on themselves and kill themselves. Another thing here, another challenge I've not mentioned here is water. If quail fall in water, it's gone. You need to dry it up a lot so that because they don't like cold, they want it warm. Now, advice for starting your quail business. Very important point to note is the egg fertility. It depends on what type of quail business you want to do. Do you want to do only, you want to be keeping for meat, or you want to keep to grow and keep growing it, or you want to keep for selling of fertile eggs? Now, fertile eggs are eggs that can hatch. It's not all eggs that can hatch, right? So only the eggs that are fertile can hatch. Now, the fertile eggs are the eggs that have been with the female, with the male, sorry. So when you want to have your fertile eggs, you put the male and the female together. It's good to always have more males than female, so you are sure that there's at least a good ratio for the female, so your eggs will be fertile. Now, if you really want to sell your eggs for food, you don't need to care about fertility of eggs. You just put the female in one place, and when they lay, you sell for food. The room condition, as I mentioned earlier, when you want to keep your quails, ensure they are kept in a warm room. You can use charcoal, you can use stove, you can use lantern. Ensure the quails don't fall into the lantern, they will die. Ensure they don't fall into the water of the drinkers, they will also die. Ensure they don't stay together, they will also die. Quails are very, very fragile at the initial stage. Now for the hatchery, you can use an external hatchery where you take your fertile eggs there and they hatch it after a number of days, I think 21 days, and your quails will be ready. But you can also buy your own incubator. You can get a small incubator for 256 quail eggs. You can get for less than 200,000 naira. It's just about maintaining a certain temperature, and you hatch your quails yourself. Now imagine a whole cycle where you have you have your matured birds and they are producing eggs, they are producing fertile eggs, and you have your small incubator. Immediately your fertile eggs are being produced, you put them in the incubator. After it's hatched, you keep them again in your warm room. After they've grown up, you put them in the large room, they start producing eggs. You have eggs for. So it's a complete cycle of its own, and you can do it on a very small scale. As I've said, for revenue, you can make money from selling the matured quails for meat. You can sell the unfertile eggs for food. You can sell the fertile eggs for hatching. Instead of hatching all your eggs yourself, you can also sell to people who want to hatch. You can hatch yourself and sell day old. And so it also a demand for 2 weeks quails. That'll be the end on quail business. We would conclude on cassava flour processing. Cassava flour processing. Now, cassava flour is made from cassava, obviously. It can be used for baking as substitute for wheat. Nigeria imports wheat heavily. We import wheat so much that in 2008-9, there has been a tariff placed on wheat import, saying when you import wheat, you pay a certain percentage of that amount for the cassava fund. Because we know we have cassava. Obviously, remember when we were talking about gari, that we produce millions of tons of gari every year. So we have cassava in Nigeria. And cassava can be a substitute for wheat for making bread and snacks. But we don't utilize it. Now, the federal government decided to have the cassava bread fund where they ensure that you can. Okay, sorry, I'm distracted. They ensure that after you import your wheat, a percentage is paid to the government. That money is kept aside for cassava flour processing. Although we know what happened in Nigeria, that money is nowhere to be found now, but it exists. And eventually, Nigeria would include, there's an approval being pending for about 30 or 40% inclusion of cassava flour in every wheat that you sell in the market. So if you want to make bread, you must include 30% cassava to the wheat. If you want to make cake, you must include 30% cassava to it. And it's possible. Very soon, I'm sure that will be approved. And if you have your cassava processing plant, you would be able to benefit from that. Now, where do we source cassava from? A lot of states make cassava, farm cassava in Nigeria. We have Nasarawa, we have Taraba, we have Kwara, Edo, Bauchi, Benue. So it's cut across all the geopolitical zones. We have the north, we have the south, we have the east. In fact, Edo have a lot of cassava, a lot of it. We have some in the north also, and even in the southwest, we also have cassava. So you can source your cassava from any of these places. Now, the location of your processing plant also matters here. Do you want to? Cassava is really heavy when it is fresh because of the moisture content, and the moisture content is not needed for cassava for processing. So you need to dry it. We'll talk about it in our process. So if your farm is very far from the farm, no, let me come again. If your processing plant is very far from the farm, you need to transport cassava with the moisture content, and it's waste of money. So you rather do the peeling and the drying in the farm or close to the farm, so that when you are moving your goods to your factory, you know you are not moving waste. Where can you supply your cassava flour? As I mentioned, because of the federal government's inclusion of cassava flour in wheat, FMCGs, people that make flour, like Dangote flour, Honeywell flour, flour mills, they must include it eventually. Starch producers, there are people that make starch. They use flour also. There's edible starch. Actually, they use it for different types of food, or they use it in food production, and it's also made from cassava flour. Now, fish feed producers also use cassava flour to ensure that their feed floats on water. Now, what are the challenges with cassava flour production? Number one is herdsmen. The herdsmen call, let me not call them herdsmen, let me say the unknown gunmen, right? They claim cassava is indomie for some cattle. So some people always um, have their farms attacked by some of these people, and it's a challenge for farmers today. FMCG low demand. Federal government have not enforced the FMCGs to implement this 30% inclusion. Maybe they will start with 10% and gradually make it 30%. We don't know. But because of that, FMCG have not enforced it in their production. Now, for now in Nigeria, cassava flour is not yet accepted as an alternative to wheat. There are countries where they use 100% cassava flour for bread. They do because they don't have wheat. But we have the cassava flour, and we don't have wheat, but we are instead importing the wheat. I'm sure we'll get there. Another challenge with cassava flour production is it's a long process. And this is a process. Number one, it starts with the peeling. After you plant your cassava and you've harvested it, you need to peel. After peeling, you wash it a bit. You don't soak it, you wash it just to remove the dirt, because cassava flour needs to be white. After removing the dirt, one of the another priority requirements for cassava flour is the moisture content. We'll talk about that later. Now, after washing, you can either grate or you dry immediately. Some people have grating machines where they grate and make them into chips, and they can dry those ones. It's faster to dry. But some people don't have patience for that, or they don't have access to these graters, so they just slice them into bits and they sell and they dry them in the sun. Sun drying is the best for cassava, because if you try to use some machines, there's a possibility of it being cooked. So instead of your, for instance, if you microwave cassava, it would not dry the cassava, it would cook the cassava. And you can't use cooked cassava for cassava flour. That's why up to today, sun drying is still the best approach for cassava flour. After then, you can crush. That if you did not grate, you need to crush. Then you grind. If your grinding machine is not really good, you need to sieve at the end. It's a long process, and a lot of people run away from this. Of course, I've mentioned the location of your factory. Ensure you have low moisture content. Do not compromise in quality and the whiteness of flour. Then situate your factory where there is constant or access to electricity, because diesel cost is high. And then approach FMCGs and register suppliers. Remember, we mentioned that FMCGs may take time to make payments, not only for grain, even for products like cassava flour. But if you have the registration with them and you are constantly producing, you'll be able to meet up with them, and immediately they are making payments, you know that another one is going in, as long as you have constant production. Notable mentions. I know we only mentioned 7 agribusinesses you can start. We have some notable mentions. Number one is pap powder production. This is getting really interesting. They don't sell pap like we used to in the past. Before they'll make pap and it's a little bit solid and they'll wrap it in nylon and sell. These days they don't do that anymore. They convert that liquid pap into powder. And recently I saw Peak Milk. Peak have also started doing this. So they are not only doing milk, they are now doing pap in powder form. There are a lot of small businesses doing this. Interestingly, I met a woman who also have this. She have a factory in Abuja. But what she do is she had most of her markets outside Nigeria. So she was doing exports heavily. She was heavily into exports of the pap powder. And she was successful, at least for some of her doings. I've forgotten her name. I'm sure I can remember later. Now, rabbit farming is also good because rabbits produces a lot, so the multiplication is good, and they are good meats. I heard they are really, really tasty. right? So that's for the rabbit farming. You can start small and your rabbit will increase. Another is tiger nut drink. There's tiger nut drink and dates. I can't remember the local name for dates. Uh, I can't remember now, but it's they make the drink and it's really good. People buy it. You can package yours, and until you have your NAFDAC registration, you can just ensure you sell only locally. Now, vegetable supply. If you're in the big cities where there are hardly any farms, you can source your vegetables from small places and sell in such location. Dates are called Dobino in Hausa. Thank you. That's all for our notable mentions. As I said earlier, we'll be having other sessions in the next few weeks where we'll go very deep into each of the training. Say if we pick quail farming, we'll bring a resource person and the whole hour will be for only quail farming. If we are picking seedlings, we'll bring a resource person who will teach us how to start the seedlings and how to identify the seedlings so we don't buy grass. And I'm sure we'll know which of these businesses to start. While concluding my session, I'll need to note that it's not all agribusinesses you are meant to start. You are not meant to do all the agribusinesses. You look for the one that suits your environment, the ones you know that you can do and start them. Do not say vegetable supply is good. I see somebody doing it. Let me quickly do it. Ensure you study it and you know how it's done. Know your market, know the pricing, do your cost analysis before you start. But notwithstanding, you can do trials. We encourage trials. Say you want to supply tomatoes to Port Harcourt, buy a basket, give it a try, but don't put all your money in because somebody else is doing it. Ensure you grow into your agri business. Thank you very much, and we would be taking questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timothy, for that session. It was quite insightful. I know that I have learned a lot. One of the major things I learned is that agribusiness is important because everybody eats food. You mentioned Gary, everybody takes Gary, and so it's a very good business to go into, especially in a time like this. And I also learned that contrary to public opinion, most of Nigeria's food, it seems, comes from the north. Usually say the south has more because of their climate, their weather, that more food comes from the south. But it seems it's from the north that most food comes from. And since we are too afraid of the north to return and pick up a hoe and go to the farm, and we could try some of these things. Sales, supply, no contact business. Really, you don't have to go to the farms. These look quite interesting. So now we'll be taking questions. Please, you can raise your hand if you have a question, or you can write it in the message box. I'll be looking to see questions. Okay. Someone says for seedlings, some of the seedlings are kind of climate sensitive. I believe that is true. Can some seedlings that you mentioned in high demand in the north be grown in Western Nigeria under good temperature conditions too? So I think she's asking that, is there climate conditioning that can be done in the western part of this country or southern part to grow seedlings that are originally from the north?
Okay.
Timothy?
For seeds, most of the purchase of seedlings are not for commercial purpose. Most of them is just for you trying it out and you using it, planting and liking it, so you can control your environment. That's why the resource persons will tell us that you should follow the timing for watering it. What's the weather condition in your environment? Do you think it's good to water it at this point? Okay, you only sprinkle in the morning or sprinkle in the evening, or put it in a place where there's sunlight. Do not put it in the sun. So many places, but it's not for outside the farm. It's a controlled environment farming for most of them. Some they plant them in their pots, their flower pots. That's where you can grow them. But for the commercial farming, that you would be affected by the climate because you can't control that necessarily. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much. So seedlings, when you talk about seedlings, it means mostly spices or decorative flowers. I know of rosemary, aloe vera. People are really interested in those these days to just keep in their kitchens, in their backyards. And it's easy to control the weather condition, the temperature mostly for that kind of seedling. Okay, another question. You said for the seedlings, how can you get the real seedlings and how can you get high demand for it? So this is more of marketing. Where do you source from and then how do you sell?
Yes, there are actually seeds, the seeds itself. Um, okay, say that for the seedlings, how can you get the real seedlings? Do you mean how can you get the seeds or the seedlings itself? So for the seedlings, as I said earlier, there are quite a number of contacts we have that sell seedlings in different locations in the country, right? They have how they continue producing. They have nurseries and they continue producing their seedlings, right? So how can you get high demand for it? There are some plants, there are some of these seedlings that are in-house plants. I know a neighbor has a lot, maybe up to 10 of them in his house. And I went there and I liked one. He wanted to give me one, but I said I don't have time to nurture any plants. Right. So from your market starts even in your neighborhood. Some people even keep some plants they use for cooking. They just put it in the house and they can pick one leaf, use it for cooking here, pick another one tomorrow, and then it keeps growing. So the demand is not so much in high quantity that I have noticed so far. That's my response.
All right. Thank you very much. Another question says for rice, if one purchase the machines just like the stoner and the polisher, how can you get more farmers that will be using your machines for their rice? I think
Oh,
while explaining, you mentioned that people can bring their rice
yeah.
and you polish it, you package it for them. So how do you get the farmers to use your machineries?
First of all, I don't know where location is. If you need to. Okay, this example. There are people that cut board for furnitures. Those people that cut board for furnitures, they are located in the market where they sell boards. So if you want to have your farm, your processing plant, you need to situate it in a location where people farm rice or where people keep rice. So do not build your farm processing plant in Lagos, for instance, and expect farmers to bring their rice all the way from maybe Kano to come to your processing plant in Lagos for polishing and stoning. So you have to situate it in a location where um, there is a demand for that. And as I mentioned, Yola and Kano, I know we have some people from Kano here. They can have their machines there and they'll definitely get some farmers. And of course, you need to do your marketing. And people may not know you exist, but you can do your own marketing.
Okay, so one thing I know is that for every business, location is key. Location is key, and you need to know your target market. If you want to sell Gary, you go to a student environment, you're definitely going to sell. That is what we take. If you want to sell fancy flowers, all these pot flowers, you don't go, your target market cannot be a small community where they are still with low level income, where they are still struggling to feed. You know that your business is not going to do very well there. So location is key for any kind of business, including agribusinesses.
That's correct.
Another question here says, what do you think about yam retailing and how
Okay.
is the best way to transport goods? So yam is not one of the agribusinesses that we discussed today, but Timothy, do you have something to contribute?
For yam retailing, the yam business we do between Benue and, of course, we all know Benue have a lot of yam. We do between Benue and Abuja. That's where most of our yam business is. I've not, I'll be frank, done maybe Benue to Lagos, yam from Benue to Lagos. I've not. But then it depends on the quantity you are getting. See, when we do quantity of about 1,000 yam or less, we use some buses. I'm sure you know some J5 buses, or I don't know if anyone knows J5, or these normal buses that are empty. We load the yams in there and we offload in Abuja. And what we do in such a scenario now, I'm talking about the retailing now. We never sell the yam in the market. It's what voice of mouth, word of mouth. To be honest, it's word of mouth that sold all the yams. Okay, I have yam, but I'm not selling my yam less. I'm not selling less than 10 pieces. So if we have 1,000 and we tell people we are not selling less than 10 pieces, we keep for a while. Ensure you keep well so the yam don't spoil. As I mentioned, storage is very important, and we tell them buy minimum 10 or sometimes minimum 20, and people buy because it's cheaper than buying in the market. So they buy and keep. So our logistics is using buses, and then the retail, we put a number of yam as minimum.
Okay, I see someone raising his hand.
Okay.
So
Colade,
I
I see.
believe it's a I believe it's a question. You can go ahead with your question. You can unmute and go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, or good morning, rather.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for the enlightenment. God bless you.
Yep.
So, please, I want to ask where could be a good source for tiger nuts, vegetables like tomatoes, pepper, or onions?
Okay.
And probably also another question I have is a good advice for storage, especially for the vegetables,
Hmm. Okay. So you mentioned tomatoes, uh,
onions,
onions. Okay. So
ginger, tiger nuts. Yeah.
all right. So let me tell you, ginger. We've done ginger. We source for ginger in um, Kaduna. There's a village called Sakia in Kafanchan. After Kafanchan, they do ginger a lot. That's the only thing they do in that place. Ginger. They farm ginger. They dry ginger. It's called Sakia in after Kafanchan. Now for tomatoes, we know that just tomato is one of the best in Nigeria, and that's why they said you look like tomato just as a good compliment, right? Tomato is quite good. Now we have for onion. I want Elizabeth to tell us about onion. Where can we source onion? I know you have experience in that.
Yes, onions. We might not know, but onions. Most of Nigeria's onion come from Sokoto State. It's their major produce. Sokoto State is to onions as Plateau State is to tomatoes.
Oh, that's good. Well, how do we then? How do you transport the onions, especially because I know it can spoil?
Yes, so because Sokoto State has so much experience in farming onions, they already have their ways of preserving it. I was with some farmers just last week and they were giving us information on how they go about this. So the onions that are transported are dried.
Okay.
They are made to be dry. Onions is fresh, but it can be dry, like dry on the outside in a way that it would not spoil easily. So they transport it in sacks. They have special sacks for transporting onions. There is a place, Kaswandaji, where most of the onions are being transported in trucks. Daily, they transport up to, I think the man said, up to 500 trucks in a day, every day from
Of
Sokoto
course.
State. So it's a very good business to invest in.
Okay. So for he also asked question about transporting tomatoes. Now, with the experience of transporting tomatoes from Jos to Lagos, we've noticed that you pray, you call on the God you have that the truck does not, the vehicle don't break down. Now, this is the experience we've had in transporting tomatoes and also in, I can see Mohammed's hand is up. Right after this response, you take him. In transporting tomatoes and potatoes from the north and these vegetables, you pray to all the gods you have that the truck does not break down. Because if the truck breaks down on the road, your tomato will get to your location damaged, and that's a loss, right? So you ensure you take your truck and your goods to transport companies that are instant. Now, there are other ways of transporting fresh food from the north. We have some trucks called reefer trucks. Reefer trucks are they are like frozen trucks. They are containers. They are 40-foot containers, but they have some machines around it to keep the goods in there cool. But they are very expensive. They are so expensive that if you bring tomatoes from Jos to Lagos, you may most likely not, or you might most likely not break even. So that's why we stick to the regular truck. Some other people also use frozen trucks, like fish trucks, to move their goods, but it also gets expensive. That's one way of logistics. I don't know if that answers your question, Kaladi.
That answers the question. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So one more thing I should note is that in our future sessions, we'll still have some people that specialize in these businesses to come train us and even give us contacts on people who are there to help us bring it to our own location. Thank you, Kaladi. Mohammed, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm calling from Bochi.
Oh, that's great.
I'm one of the also a farmer for onions,
Okay.
also the tomatoes. So that's why I just raised my hand, and I would like to say something about the onions. Hadeja, which is Jigawa State,
Okay.
that's a village called Marma, and if you go to Hadeja, he was saying that Sokoto is one of the best, but also remember what that the Hadeja state, Jigawa state, which is a Hadeja local government, also
Okay.
onions, which is in very large quantity. Also, my farm also there. I'm from Bochi, but I'm still farming in Hadeja state, almost 300 kilometers away from me.
Wow.
So I know this is a very good to discuss because I will boldly say that we have resources, but the only problem we're having is who are we going to contact? You understand? So that we can shift our goods from Bauchi or from Hadeja. Let me just say it from the north entirely,
Okay.
mostly eastern part, not eastern part, because I stay in Bauchi state, but also my farm. I have my farm here, and also my farm in the Hadija, Jigawa State, which is Hadija. So
Okay.
because we don't have, because they have a very vast land and water resources are more abundant than compared to Bauchi State.
Okay.
But the problem is we like this. I would like this platform to be, as you said previously, that it will be like sessions of different farm inputs. That how much are we going to liaise with the people that would be able to transport or middleman or whatsoever. But the problem here is if this platform will be able to, have a platform, to organize something that we from the north bringing items from the north and trusting our items or agricultural produce to someone, you understand me, in the south, so that we can be able to make money in between.
That's true.
Because most of these middlemen that are saying the crucials here, you understand, as in the crucials in terms of they buy cheaply, you understand.
Okay.
Sometimes you feel like, can I do this again? Because when like if you talk about tomato, after December, January, February are the most the market crushes because everybody farms tomato. Cultivate tomato, pepper, and most of the things. But before December, sometimes it's because everybody is during during rainy season, which is August, September. Everybody is busy with rice, corns. You understand? But
Yes.
not vegetables. It's after we cultivated vegetable. All these cereals. Then before we plant the vegetables. That's why it's more cheaper during September. January, February. So I don't know if somebody is interested in buying dry tomato, dry pepper, which is a shombo. I don't know if this platform can be able to set aside this team that we are happy we can able to list them out, and those that are in the south can be able to contact the buyers. You understand, so that we will be able to have a two-way benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very good. So, you know, in almost all of the slides, we have the source and the supply. And I mentioned in the session that we have a lot of people from the north and from the south, the farmers, of course, not only the north that farm, and we also have people in the big cities on this call. So we have created our source and we have created the supply. So we would eventually have a link up such that people in the south, to be honest, people in the big markets are looking for where to put money, and they fall for a lot of scammers who parade them as farmers.
Exactly.
Right? So we would get to know the real farmers. We'll get to know the need of these farmers and see what way we can bring supply to those who actually want to buy. So definitely we'll continue. This platform is, as we said, is a media support organization. We are going to support everyone possible to ensure farming is improved and increased in Nigeria. Thank you very much. I have a question for you. What products majorly do you farm?
During rainy season we do farm rice.
Oh, okay.
That's the one thing that I can say for sure, because rice is here, I mean, is much. And after rice, which is the during this time, it's only this year that I did not farm wheat, because I'm a wheat farmer at the same time.
Okay.
Yes, we do wheat because, you know, it doesn't grow during rainy season. It's only we have to irrigate it, because we don't have those that are opportune to be on the high mountain like Jos and Taraba. Some part of the Taraba, they can be able to farm, to cultivate those in the rainy season, because it needs high altitude. So for those that we are in the low altitude, we cannot be able to farm, I mean, to cultivate those, I mean, one that is during rainy season. But actually, wheat farming is very important. I mean, I involved into wheat farming. Also, like I told you, tomatoes is, you can't do much, this time around you cannot do much, I mean, very large scale tomato, because you have to just do maybe 50 to 100 bags, I mean, this basket, so that, you know, the market, you cannot be able to risk everything, because we are being input.
Yeah.
You only have to sell it locally here. We cannot be able to transport much of this thing, because, you know, it's perishable goods. So we can't risk taking it from Bauchi to Lagos. Only tomatoes are. We can't. It's very risky. So sometimes we dry it off rather than.
I also do tomatoes.
We dry it off rather than having it in the to say fresh, because during rainy season it used to be a bit expensive. So it's better for us sometimes when you sell some, I mean, as fresh, and some as dry one, and also onions. I think this is the thing that I mostly do, but set aside maybe cucumber in a small quantity.
Okay.
I think this is the thing that I involve into.
Okay, that's very good. I'm sure we're going to discuss more, and you let us know. Maybe you can train us also on one of these products that you're very good in. Thank you very much, Mohammed.
You're welcome.
Do you have any other question, or anyone who wants to speak?
No, there are no questions. There are no raised hands also.
Okay, that's great. We'll be having another session by 12 because we had a lot of registration. So we had to divide the session into two. So we've had the 10 o'clock session. We'll be having another one by noon. So anyone who wants to join, you can join. I'm sure we'll have more people join and also give us their inputs. Okay, I think do we have more hands raised?
Can I talk? Can I go on?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. So I just want to make some suggestions, anyways.
Okay.
Actually, when I registered for
Yeah.
this program, I
Yes.
was actually waiting to get an email notification. So
Okay.
I didn't get email notification. So I think for other prospects or people who must have, just try and send us a notification so that we can get a link.
Okay.
And also, I also want to suggest, like Mohammed was talking about there, I feel sometimes there could be some should I say technical solutions to some of these problems, like the aspect of, say, transporting fresh produce from far distances to, to the main markets.
Yeah.
So if also, like you said, we are going to be having some resource person who will be coming on the group to talk to us. I'm
Yes.
sure there are also some, resource persons out there who are technically inclined about possible or visible and affordable solutions to some of these problems. You could
Yeah.
just try and help us to make that available also.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. We actually have a lot of resource people. We have people who are just consultants in agric. They do not own any farm. They just give you the best practices. We have people who are only export consultants. They do not own any farms. They do not own any products. They will just work with you and help you package your product for export. So we'll definitely have a lot of sessions. Now, regarding the registration, we are so sorry. That must have been an error, but we thought everyone got an invite. So we'll do that for the next training, which will be in 2 weeks' time. We'll ensure everyone gets an email and an SMS immediately after registering. Thank you very much, Kalade. I think Mohammed, you have your hand raised again, or is it an old hand?
I believe it's an old hand because it hasn't dropped since.
Okay.
Yes.
So someone asked a question: do you have
People in the
people
business.
they can invest? So for now, please let's note that for now, um, Agroye does not tell people where to invest in. We do not, as of today, tell you to invest in a farm or a business because we know there are so many scams out there. We don't want to be a part of it at the moment. If in the future we have a platform for investing or we have farmers we want to link with you directly to invest in, we will put out a public notice. But at the moment, everyone joining the call are just here to learn, to make contacts, to get connections, and to get more information about how to do their farming. But we would not tell you where to invest your money. We tell, like the 7 businesses we've done now, we are telling you you can do any of them with any of the contacts you can get. But we will not, it is a very major disclaimer, tell you to invest in a particular person as of today. Thank you. Elizabeth, please.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining in on this call. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for all the insightful questions and contributions. Mr. Mohammed, it's really nice to meet you. So this concludes this training session. Thank you once again for attending. And kindly follow us on our social media platforms so we can link up and continue these conversations there. The links have been dropped in the in-call messages box, so you can check it. We're on Twitter as Agroye Media. We're on Facebook as Agroye, on Instagram as Agroye Media, TikTok also Agroye Media, and YouTube. And look to our website, agroye.com. You can also reach us on WhatsApp. Our number is in the message box, or send us an email on hello@agroye.com. Thank you once again. It's been a pleasure being here with you, and we hope you have a great day today. Thank you.